Good morning, sports fans. You're listening to 96.9 FM WHYR-LP Baton Rouge Community Radio.
This is Eric Hatfield along with Coach Perry Daniels, and we are here to bring you the latest, the greatest, the best, and the most entertaining in high school, college, and professional sports. You are listening to Louisiana All American Sports. Good morning. Oh, why not? Ain't nobody, don't ask me. Good morning, Baton Rouge. You're listening to Louisiana All American Sports, and we have a full crew today back in the saddle. This is Eric Hatfield.
And I'm Coach Perry Daniels, and it's good to be back in the saddle, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Man, there were some big developments over the last week, man. Looks like the Saints have them a new hybrid, a tight end, wide receiver.
Yeah, they got a tight receiver over there, Jimmy Graham. We've been keeping you guys abreast of this story for weeks now. As you know, New Orleans Saints franchise player, all-pro tight end Jimmy Graham. His contract was up after last season. The Saints naturally put the franchise tag on him, but there was a lot of tug of war as to how much that franchise tag should have been worth. A lot of back and forth and back. Jimmy Graham had filed a grievance with the NFL saying that he should be considered a wide receiver whose franchise tag is about $5 million more worth than his franchise tag as a tight end. His tag was worth $7 million, the wide receiver tag $12 million. What that means to you folks that get all your sports from us is that if they could not reach a long-term agreement with him, they'd have to pay Graham $7 million next year if he were treated as a tight end, $12 million next year if he were treated as a wide receiver. That never happens. Franchise tags never work out for either the team or the player. There's no security for the player. The team's salary cap gets blown up as it all rolls up in one season. Graham finally agreed to a 4-year deal worth up to $40 million with $21 million guaranteed. This is what I think of as a win-win for both sides, and I think Jimmy Graham and his advisors had a smart calculated risk taken on his side. I agree. And this is why. Graham originally was offered a 6-year deal worth about slightly less than the $10 million a year that he signed for. But here's the deal. Jimmy Graham has been in the league for 4 years. He's about, I don't know his date of birth, but let's assume he was 21, 22 when he came out of college. That makes him about 25, right? Ballpark.
26, I believe he is.
Okay, yeah, so that'll make him 30 when he's coming out. With the rules, you basically can't touch wide receivers. He'll still be in prime health in 4 years. Right. In 6 years, he'd be 32. He's going to be in line for a blow-up contract. Either some desperate team is going to overpay, which happens all the time, or he's going to be on his path to a Hall of Fame career, and the Saints will have to pony up probably a year early. Either way, as long as Graham's body stays healthy and he continues to produce, long-term, he set himself up for a very big payday.
I agree. This was win-win for both situations. Not quite as good as Graham would have liked.
Sure.
But better than any other tight end has ever gotten.
Oh, yeah. He bested Rob Gronkowski. He bested Tony Gonzalez's big deal a few years ago. Jimmy Graham's getting paid, and he's raising the bar for all tight ends, and this is smart. He's going to, by taking the 4-year deal instead of the 6-year deal, he has an opportunity to benefit from his own labors, because then the next Gronk, the next Antonio Gates, they're going to get paid and so on and so forth, and he's going to get to capitalize on that while he's still young.
That's exactly right. Now tell me this, Eric. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not there's some animosity here left over from the negotiations. What do you think there?
I think there's always, everybody always wants more.
Sure.
You know, I think even Drew Brees, remember, even his deal came at the deadline and he got paid at the time, you know? There's always going to be, it's a business. And everybody wants what they want, and of course it's the player's body, so it's a little personal to them.
Sure.
But you know, when that whistle blows and it's time to get on the field, when they get in training camp with their boys, and let's face facts, Jimmy Graham is still getting a big paycheck relative to last year. He gets that first game check, I think he'll be all right.
He's been underpaid for a while.
He has been.
You know, and if there's any angst here, it may be that Sean Payton testified for the other side, the owners league.
Right.
You know, but I'm sure, as intelligent as Sean Payton is, I'm sure that he has sat Graham down, and they've had discussions, and they both realize that is the business of it.
Right.
And regardless of how close you are to your head coach, he still works for management.
Right. He serves at the behest of his owners. He's got to do their bidding. And
correct.
You know, I won't beat it too much, but last week we did talk. I was completely on Graham's side until the league laid out its case. And there were some pretty compelling numbers. You know, wide receivers are covered by cornerbacks. They line up wide every down. Jimmy Graham doesn't always do that. It's a different skill set. And you know, he gets a lot of his catches at the expense of linebackers and safeties covering him.
Well, so, hey, good thing, man. Camp opens up this week.
Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints are flying to West Virginia to hold camp. Man, it is football season.
Oh, I know, man. I can't. It's like the coming of spring for me. It just comes in July and August. I can't wait. I always look. It's funny. That's just how big the NFL is.
Correct.
That training camp, practice. Training
We're
camp.
excited about practice.
Right. It's news. Speaking of the NFL being a big dog, there was an article in the Times-Picayune yesterday that cited the 50 most valuable sports franchises in the world. It was a report by Forbes magazine. Of the 50 teams, 30 of those 50 were NFL teams. Means there are only 2 NFL teams, not the top 50. The New Orleans Saints were valued at $1.004 billion.
Wow. With a B.
With a B.
Wow.
Tom Benson back in 1985 paid $70 million for that team, plus received some incentives from the state, which he's kept receiving, which of course add to the value. Adjusted for inflation, his investment's grown somewhere between 6 and 7 times, depending on which estimate you believe. This is a case in point. This is really Perry's baby more than mine, but it made me think. This is another example of what happens when you save your money, invest, and try to build wealth. Now, I don't expect most of us to go buy a car dealership out of high school and make $70 million and buy a football team, but it's an example.
And this is why he can pay Jimmy Graham $40 million.
Right, because Tom Benson took his money and acquired wealth. And you too, it might be $7 million, $70 million, might be $7,000, but if you grow your money, you will have greater options. It's like a plant in future years.
Right. But that begs the question, Eric, and then we're going to diverse slightly, which we do on the Louisiana All American Sports radio show.
By the way, 225-343-9927, 225-343-9927 to get in on the conversation.
You're listening to 96.9 WHYR-LP Baton Rouge Community Radio. That makes me ask the question, well, why aren't we teaching these type of things in our school systems?
It does beg the question. You learn this stuff. You learn a lot of this. You and I know we both have master's degrees in business. I was a business undergraduate. They teach you this out of the yin-yang at the at the post-secondary level. You don't only get so much of it in high. I had 1 hour of free enterprise. It was a half a semester, and we learned a little bit of that in high school. I don't know what the free enterprise requirement is in general in public schools.
Half a semester.
Yeah, you only get so much of that. And to me, especially in inner city schools, especially with kids that might not have the resources or the ability to go to college, might have to work out of high school to support their families, or might be interested in a trade, they should be learning those kinds of things when they're young.
Right.
These kinds of examples when they're young.
Right. You're absolutely right, man. So, other NFL news?
That is actually going to wrap up all our NFL news for today. I don't have much.
Well,
you got anything?
Man, look, I had an exciting trip. And last night, I'm anticipating a caller within the next few minutes. And caller, if you're out there listening, you can go ahead and call in now. I know I had mentioned 11:10, but I wanted to surprise my partner here. But go ahead and give us a call if you're out there listening. Last night, man, I went to D.C. this past week.
Fun.
And flew in last night, had a connecting flight in Charlotte, North Carolina. And you know how when you get on a plane and you're the first one to your seat, you're kind of looking to see who's going to sit next to you, who's assigned to you. And I had the pleasure of this lovely lady being assigned to the seat right next to me.
That always makes the flight better.
So it gets even better than that, though, Eric. So as we're sitting there talking, she asked me, am I from New Orleans? Well, and I explained that situation.
Right.
And she says, well, I happen to be the mother of New Orleans Saints wide receiver Joe Morgan.
No way.
Yes,
cool, man. That's awesome. That's a guy who is of a lot of interest, I think. He's got an interesting story to tell.
Exactly. So we had a fantastic conversation for those 2.5 hours on that flight. One of the best flights I've ever had.
I'll bet so.
And she committed to being a guest on our show this morning.
Awesome.
And I had the opportunity to meet Joe last night.
Oh, cool.
At the airport. And it was just a fantastic event. I don't want to steal her thunder.
Right.
So I don't want to leave the NFL just yet.
Oh, I got you. Oh, cool, man.
So hopefully we can get her in within the next minute or so.
Sure.
And Marion Morgan, and they are from Ohio. You know, Joe Morgan actually started off at the University of Illinois.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and he finished his collegiate career at Walsh University.
Right.
And just so happens, Eric, that he went to McKinley High.
No way, really? You know what? I think I saw something in the paper a couple of years ago when he got in camp about a local connection, but I forgot all about that.
Yes.
So did he spend?
No, he went to McKinley High. There's a McKinley High in Ohio.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought there was a local connection with the man. My bad.
No, so he went to McKinley High in Canton, Ohio, and it was just
small world.
Small world.
We cover a lot of Baton Rouge McKinley High School sports on 96. I mean, on Louisiana All American Sports.com.
Right.
You know, and interesting, just for those of you that again get your sports from us and might be very, very casual, have a very casual sports interest. Joe Morgan is he's been. This is his, I believe, his fourth year as a member of the New Orleans Saints. He signed on as an unrestricted free agent. Came out. He made the practice squad, then got called up, came out like gangbusters as a deep threat, looked like the next Devery Henderson, and then he suffered an injury in what was his breakout year to his knee, tried to come back last year, then suffered another injury either during camp or a preseason game, so the potential is sky high, and I'm sure Mr. Morgan can't wait to get back on the football field to demonstrate the potential that he showed everybody.
Yeah, he was very excited about that potential of getting back on the field, and it's great. It tells you what the Saints think of him.
That they kept
him around.
Yeah, because you know a lot of undrafted rookie free agents, they're commodities, they're expendable. But Mr. Morgan showed that he can be a big asset, and that's why they've hung on to him and paid him and kept him on the squad and so forth. Because there's a relatively low risk and a huge reward if he can live up to the potential that they think he has.
Right. Well, I just tried to call her. She's not answering. So let's move on to our NBA, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
If we get there.
Alrighty. Well, NBA. There is so much free agency news in the NBA. It's almost unbelievable. If this were Louisiana All American hoops, we could spend a whole show on it. But let's just talk about the highlights. First of all, locally, the Pelicans added sharpshooter Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer Fredette, if you remember, was a sensation a few years ago at BYU. Had a few games where he's hitting 30 and 35-foot shots on ESPN, and came to the NBA. And he's kind of like we expected. He'd be a niche player. He's not a big guy. He's no defensive skills whatsoever at the NBA level. But you know what? If you can shoot the J, you got a job in the NBA. Jimmer Fredette last year shot about 49% from the arc, 90% from the line, about 11 minutes a game. He's a guy who can come off the bench and hit that critical three if you need it, and the Pelicans picked him up. So I think that's a weapon that the Pelicans really haven't had, like talking about, at least not coming off the bench fresh. So good addition for the Pelicans, adding Jimmer Fredette. Spent his first few years in Sacramento, went to Chicago in the middle of last year, and now will be joining the New Orleans Pelicans. Going from the sublime to the ridiculous, or maybe not, Lance Stevenson. We talked a lot about him. He, of course, is the enigmatic but very talented forward for the last year spent his first few years with the Indiana Pacers. The 23-year-old Stevenson was offered a 5-year, $44 million extension by Indiana. He said last week he wanted them to cut him a check. So what did he do? He signed with the Charlotte Hornets for 3 years, $27 million. So we're talking about $8.8 million a year average over 5 years versus $9 million over 3 years. Michael Jordan had a little sit down with him about some of his antics blowing in the.
That's the first thing I'm thinking of, man. That may be the best thing for that young man's career.
No, I agree, because look, he gets a chance to prove that he's not a court jester,
right?
You know, and the talent is there. I mean, like I said, I've never seen. He's one of the few people I've seen make LeBron hesitate or readjust his game. That's not easy, and he puts in about 15 points a game.
Right.
So I mean, look, this is a talented young kid, and if he can behave himself the next 3 years, he's going to be due for a huge payday. I'm thinking to the tune of $15 to $20 million. So the Hornets and Michael Jordan are giving him a chance to prove himself. Just don't blow in anyone's ear. Don't put a picture on Instagram with $1 million cash in your camp. Don't go into somebody else's timeout huddle, and maybe you'll get that big paycheck.
Hey man, well, we all grow, we all evolve, so maybe that was just another step in this young man's maturation process.
I wish him the best. I love potential. He's got it.
Other NBA news?
Oh, yeah, a couple of quick. I'll go through Paul Gasol. We talked about him last week. He was being courted by 3 teams, the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Chicago Bulls. Well, the balance of power has flipped in the East. I think we're going to have a dogfight between the Chicago Bulls and probably the Cleveland Cavaliers, depending on how other free agency moves work out. The Bulls amnestied Carlos Boozer. He's still going to get his $16 million, and the Lakers are only going to pay $3 million a year off that max contract. But that
fantastic pickup by the Lakers.
Oh yeah, good value, man. And that freed up cap room for Pau Gasol, who is a 34-year-old center or stretch forward, but he's still got a lot of scoring and passing and defense left in him, and he's going to tip the balance of power in the Eastern Conference, going to the Chicago Bulls.
Yes.
With Derrick Rose coming back. You got Doug McDermott. The Bulls are getting some offense. They've done okay with just defense and not a lot of stars. Now you got Noah, Gasol, and Rose going back to the Bulls.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see how Rose rebounds. It's been a long time since that young man's really played a number of months in the NBA season. And, it's still questionable whether or not McDermott can guard anyone, I
don't see that happening. Not next year. Yeah.
So, in the NBA, it's great to be a shooter, but you have to get stops.
Right, exactly. You do, or else you become a specialist.
Right.
Eric Bledsoe, another very talented point guard. He and the Phoenix Suns are way apart. The Suns are offering him a 4-year, $48 million extension, but he wants a max 5-year, $80 million. You're doing the math. That's talking about $12 million versus $20 million. I actually think the true value lies somewhere between 15 and 17 million, so they're far apart, and I think the real value is in the middle. Bledsoe's a valuable asset. He scores 18 a game, but he's only dishing out about 6 dimes a game, and as a point guard, you need to be a little bit more facilitative, but, the Suns had a step up last year. They finished with a .600 winning percentage, barely missed the playoffs, and, he was the key part in a guard-driven league.
I agree.
You got to find a way to work that out, or you're gonna lose all of your progress that you made in 1 year.
Yes.
LeBron James.
Now to the big news, huh?
Yeah. LeBron James. A couple of pieces of big news, actually.
You know what? Well, go ahead. I'm going to wait till you start this.
Real quick, I'm going to say, let's, on the court real quick, the Cleveland Cavaliers are trying to negotiate a trade. The rumor that's been going around and ESPN is pushing is that the Cavaliers are trying to deal first pick in the draft from this year, Andrew Wiggins. First pick in the draft last year, Andrew Bennett and Anthony Bennett, and a first-round pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves for all-star Kevin Love, who is he is a game breaker, plays the 5 and the 4, and can play like a guard if he needs to. That would make the Cavs overnight contenders. So they're working that deal to possibly make the Cavs serious contenders next year.
That makes sense to me, and this is what threw me off about LeBron going back to Cleveland. I was all in that corner prior to the NBA draft. I was like, okay, he's going to go back to Cleveland. And then once they drafted Andrew Wiggins, it no longer made sense to me that he would go back to Cleveland and join that team with Wiggins and Kyrie Irving. So now that they're looking to deal Wiggins and get a dominant front court presence, now it's starting to make sense.
Man, if they pull that trade up, because my thought was, okay, well, give it a couple of years and Wiggins will probably develop and they will be serious contenders for the foreseeable future. You get Kevin Love, you're contending now.
Right now.
And the synergy is great because Love has had a lot of the stuff on paper, but he's never been able to be that rising tide that lifts the boats. A lot of all-stars can at least get their team the 8th seed. He hasn't been able to really get those Wolves to a winning record. Now with LeBron and all-star and Kyrie Irving, that's coming together.
Man, now you've got a big 3.
And then Ray Allen is rumored to be kind of interested in going to Cleveland too, and they signed Mike Miller last week also. So he's bringing South Beach to the Rust Belt. That is going to be really, really interesting. I just wanted to really quickly touch on a theme that, again, this is really Perry's baby, but I saw it yesterday, so I wanted to mention it. A couple of things. LeBron James has been kind of outspoken about how he's trying to get paid now. He's kind of took, you get the rookie contract, which is never your real value. He took a second contract with Cleveland that had a bit of a hometown discount. He took a deal with Miami to try to win some championships that helped get Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade there. Well, LeBron very candidly said he's trying to maximize his value now, which he should. He's already signed a 2-year contract, which is worth $42 million, the latter part of the deal being an option year. That's max money. And he also recently, and this is, again, here's that recurring theme, boys and girls, and maybe grown boys and girls. I know it's a lesson I should have learned sooner in my life. Save your money. He made an investment in Beats Mobile, which was recently acquired by Apple, and his profit, not his investment, his profit was $30 million. So if his goal is to become that's just one investment. So if his goal is to become a billionaire and become a power player like Magic Johnson, like Michael Jordan, like others. He is setting the example, guys. He is setting the example. Save your money, make smart choices. Don't spend it all on rims. Anyway, he also made an interesting statement that if he were a Major League Baseball player, which has no salary cap, he would probably be making well north of the $22 million a year he's making.
That was the key point of the article for me. And unfortunately, no one's going to remember this in 2017 when this comes up.
Right.
However, I think that we are in for a prolonged negotiation, lockout, strike, whatever you call it, because the NBA owners do not want to see this happen in the NBA.
They absolutely do not.
These unrestricted caps on veteran contracts. The players seem adamant about that.
It's interesting, though. It's the top players. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about average pay, and I know we were unsure on numbers, and I looked it up. I sent Perry a text. NBA players of the four major sports, far and away, are the highest average players. Average salary is $5 million a year. Baseball is a little north of $3 million. The NHL is a little less than that, and the NFL is barely over $1 million. You know, the rising tides lift all boats theories is probably what, you know, the LeBron James, the Kobe Bryants, the superstars are probably going to push to have maybe fewer cap restrictions, but your Mike Millers, your let's say your role players who are making about $5 million, well, the cap money is going, if those guys are making $30, $40 million a year, those guys are going to make $1, $2 instead of $5 million a year. Right. In other words, your majority, your bulk of players might be a little resistant to that. So it's going to be a very interesting.
It's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Hopefully, though, the NBA players see this coming, and they are doing what we just suggested, saving their money, investing their money, so that they won't have their backs against the wall like they did in this last collective bargaining agreement. They had their backs against the wall and had to take a bad deal.
They did. They got hosed.
And, you know, and so hopefully they are futuristic in their thinking. They see this coming. 2017 is going to be an interesting time. Yeah. And you're going to have the big money on the table from the 2015 new television contract.
A lot of revenue.
So that's a lot of revenue. And with Chris Paul, the current president of the Players Association, and LeBron James, who aspired to be the president, but he stepped down so that Chris Paul could take that. Withdrew his name from
Two
contention.
bright guys, good picks either way.
Yeah. So these guys, the hands of the Players Association seems to be in good hands. The minds of the Players Association seems to be in good hands, and hopefully they'll work out something that will remove those caps from those players, at the same time keeping intact those minimum salaries that they're getting now. Right.
I agree. I think it's, you know, let me tell you something. One thing about you have leaders at all levels. LeBron James is not only I think he is a role model. He's somebody you can have young people and even adults look up to as far as certain ways of modeling your life. But he's also a peer leader, and I hope the peers, the other garden variety NBA players, the Joe Thomases that you never heard of, and I just made up Joe Thomas. That probably is a Joe Thomas. But you know, watch what he's doing. Take notes, pay attention, because he's setting himself up to where if basketball ended today, he'd be straight for the rest of his life.
Yes, and he said in that article that he's no longer taking less than the maximum.
That's right. So, you know.
So look, Eric, let's do this, man. Let's take a break, and then let's come back with there were media days in the SWAC, media days at the SEC. Football is here, collegiate football. We're going to go over the predictions for both of those conferences and the all SEC and all SWAC teams.
All righty. So just stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. By the way, area code 225-343-9927, 225-343-9927, or you may send us a tweet at LAA Sports. That's our Twitter account at LAA Sports for Louisiana All American Sports. Please join us. We'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Louisiana All American Sports on 96.9 FM, WHYR.
Good morning, Marion. How are you this morning?
I am good. Good morning, Terry. How are you?
I am super fantastic now that I'm speaking with you. I really enjoyed that flight yesterday. It was so pleasant, and I gave the story earlier on the show. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to hear it.
No, we're not.
That's okay. First, let's start with, let's tell the people why you are actually in New Orleans.
I'm in New Orleans because I have a brand new grandbaby named Austin. And she's a beautiful, second baby. down here to spend some time with them.
Great. Now, I know that you have 2 other children aside from Joseph, so I know he gets a lot of the attention and a lot of the spotlight, but I want to make sure that you get a chance to mention those girls' names.
I have my oldest daughter's name is Anisha, and my middle daughter is Destiny.
Awesome. And with Joseph's new child, that makes how many grandchildren for you?
I have 12 grandchildren, but I have 11 living.
That is so
Ooh,
awesome.
You're going to be a busy lady around birthday, almost a birthday a month.
Right. You've got almost every month covered, I bet. A couple of them are twins, right?
I got some twins in there.
Yes. Okay, so Eric, Eric Hatfield is my broadcast partner, and he is here. And Eric, we've got a real football fan on the line right here. Yes,
good.
I mean, this isn't just some mom who's happy that her son's on the team. No, she knows football, and we're going to give her an opportunity to inform us of what she's excited about with the New Orleans Saints this year. So, Marion, if you would just go ahead and tell us what you think the Saints are going to do and what you like so far about this team.
I'm loving this year, but the Saints, their defense looks really, really good. It's a very strong defense this year. I'm really happy with their new coordinator, and I see good things coming out of it. The offense this season, they have some excellent new receivers and some new running backs that they got in this year. I'm excited about what Jimmy Graham is going to come up and do this year. I think this year the Saints are going to go all the way. If not, they're going to do pretty doggone good all the way to the playoffs.
I hear that.
Well, we like to hear a lady's voice on the show, and especially the mother of an NFL player. And I agree with many of your assumptions. I think they are poised they have a shot this year. They have a real shot.
Okay, so give us the story of how Joseph got to the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, small end cap on how Joe got there. Joe went, from high school to college. He went to Illinois, and some things transpired, and he ended up coming home and going to Walsh. And what was the blessed thing that when he was at Walsh, all 32 teams came to Canton, Ohio, to Fawcett to watch him play. During the lockout, when that happened, it kind of put a damper on things. Being a free agent, we didn't know what was going to happen. Joe had already been invited to the combine. He did a nice job there, but the Saints, they had their eyes set on him, and so did about 10 other teams. There was a duel, the Vikings and the Saints kind of went back and forth on who offered him, and God blessed us to be down here in New Orleans. So, that was not an easy thing growing up with a single parent, just his mom and dad being deceased. But we did it. He's a humble kid. He had a lot of things going for him, good things. He ran track. He played chess. He wrestled. He's strong academics. The boy was just amazing. So I'm really grateful to have a kid like that.
And you should be, Mom, and you should be. But you pushed by that chess thing.
Yeah.
He didn't just play chess. Tell them how good he was, or he is.
He played chess from grade school up to middle school. He ended up going to nationals and became nationally ranked in Arizona. He was one of the top 50 in his division. And they always tell us that people that play chess have brilliant minds.
Oh, yeah.
That they look at things and they just do it. And that's the kind of kid he is. He just looks at things, and that's just something he does.
And he should angle himself for coaching after football's over with that kind of mindset.
Right.
A lot of complicated variables there.
Right. Now he's got a long career left in football, though.
Yeah, because he also did ballet when he was younger.
No way.
Ballet, and it was kind of neat.
Joe was like, "Mom, no!" Shh.
So I know you're a very popular mom on the team, and I know we're on the air right now in the Saints facility because they're all listening to you. So I'm sure they're going to give him a little ribbon about the ballet thing. Although Lynn Swan,
Willie
Hall of
Golf.
Famer,
A lot of guys.
So a lot of receivers have taken that route. It helps with footwork.
Yeah, absolutely, which is critical.
It helps with football and it helps with track.
Okay, awesome. So I've got a couple of other questions, and then we're going to let you go. First, I've got to thank you again for joining us this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
And I really appreciate that. And again, such great conversation last night on the plane.
Thank you.
First, if you could give me the name of the book again so that my mate and I can make sure that we read that.
Okay, the name of the book was called One Flesh, but at the moment I can't remember who the author was. I'll send you a message and make sure that you remember who it is. But this book is really awesome. So once I send you the author, you can then let your listeners, it's great for couples as well as for singles.
Yes.
But
Okay.
It's a really strong book.
Okay.
What's the subject matter?
It's just about relationships and appreciation of the other sex, the opposite sex, and she was.
It's a great study tool.
Awesome.
Yes.
Everyone could use a good read like that.
Yes. So, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, it was just a pleasure, sitting on the plane talking to you and sharing a little bit about my son and my family. And this has been a fun ride. It really has been. I love the city. I love being down here, the people as well as the food. And it's just a great thing right now being a part of the Who Dat Nation.
Yes.
That's right. Now, lastly, I mentioned this to you yesterday on the plane, that we always look for some childhood dirt when we talk to the players' moms, and you kind of drop some ballet on us. But is there any other childhood dirt that you can dish on Saints wide receiver Joe Morgan?
Joe Morgan used to always go to school, watch Power Rangers in the morning. He would say, "Mom, watch the rest of that and tell me what they do when I get home from school." I'm like, "Are you for real?" I want to miss it.
I have a younger brother who's just a couple of years older than Joe, but is in that demographic when Power Rangers was in, and that is funny on so many levels.
Thank you, Marion. Have a safe stay in New Orleans and a safe flight back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And this goes out to the folks from Ohio. All right, we're back at Louisiana All American Sports, 96.9 WHYR-LP, Baton Rouge Community Radio.
Area code 225-343-9927. Area code 225-343-9927 to get in on the conversation with Coach Perry Daniels and myself here on Louisiana All American Sports. So as we intimated, football season it's right around the corner. It's almost like the Advent. If you're Catholic, you have the Advent wreath and you have the 4 candles you light up as it gets closer to Christmas, and it's kind of the same feeling for me as we're getting closer and closer to the start of football season here in Louisiana. And so, of course, Baton Rouge is a big football town, needless to say, as we have 2 squads that are both always keeping their fan gauges engaged, always in contention for their respective conference titles. And so let's get cracking with the respective preseason standouts in the Southwestern Athletic Conference and the Southeastern Conference, home to our Southern Jaguars and LSU Tigers, respectively.
That's right, Eric. In the SWAC Conference, the Southern Jaguars were overwhelmingly picked to win the Western division of the conference, and Alabama State was chosen to pick the Eastern division of the conference, which, if holds to fruition, should make for a very interesting game in Houston for the SWAC championship.
Absolutely.
Let's run through the first teamers on both sides of the ball, the offense and the defense. You've got the quarterback for Prairie View, Jerry Lovelock, was first team. Running back Courtney Brown from Prairie View. Running back Malcolm Cyrus from Alabama State. Offensive lineman Isaac Sampson of Alcorn State. Offensive lineman Dylan Bonnet of Prairie View A&M. Offensive lineman Jonathan Smith of Jackson State. Offensive lineman Jonathan Scott of Alcorn State. From Southern University, Anthony Mosley. And
another big boy.
Yeah, offensive lineman. Wide receiver Montarius Smith, who was the voted player preseason player of the year in the SWAC on the offensive side of the ball. He's from Alabama A&M. And Willie Quinn, the receiver for Southern University, also made the first team. And Jordan Payne of Alcorn State is the first team tight end.
Well, Willie Quinn's got some swiftness about him.
He does, man. I really like his game. Defensively, we've got Derek Billups, a defensive lineman out of Alabama State. Amir Bloom, a defensive lineman out of Texas Southern. Speaking of which, there's a former Texas Southern graduate being inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. The New York Giants defensive end.
Strahan went to TSU?
Michael Strahan
I didn't know
went to
that.
Texas Southern.
I did not know that.
He'll be inducted into the Hall of Fame come this August.
Wow.
Javancy Jones of Jackson State, defensive lineman. Defensive lineman Deion Roberson of Alcorn State. Linebacker Courtney Berry of Alabama State. Linebacker Jerome Howard of Prairie View. Linebacker Antonio Jenkins of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Defensive back Avery Boykin of Mississippi Valley State. Defensive back C.J. Morgan of Alcorn State.
That guy can hit.
Defensive back Devon Francois of Alcorn State. And defensive back Brandon Thomas. So, we'll leave that at that. I do want to mention...
Don't forget the special teamers.
Oh, well, yeah, the special teamers.
Near and dear to me, man.
Hayden McCraney of Alcorn State is the kicker, first team kicker. The punter is Corey Carter of Texas Southern. And the return specialist is Julian Stanford of Mississippi Valley State. So, I've got to mention, though, second teamer, probably I'm not going to rank them, one of the best athletes that I've ever coached. Leonard Tillery, the running back for Southern University, did make second team offense in the running back position.
Now, he went to McKinley?
He went to McKinley.
And he was on the basketball team, wasn't he?
No,
just football?
No, just football.
Okay,
just football.
I remember that name. Yes. I remember that name distinctly.
Oh, man, you can't forget it.
Yeah, Leonard Tillery, yeah, good kid, good player.
Great kid.
Yeah, that's C.J. Morgan. There's a DJ in New Orleans who's been on the air for about a generation with the same name, and I remember seeing this guy on a highlight reel or two. He's taking off a guy's head or three. That's a good, intimidating defensive back. Good players, good. It's going to be another fun season in the SWAC.
So, LSU, do you happen to have those?
I don't have them in my possession at the moment.
Okay, if you give me a minute, I'll pull them up. I do know that LSU was picked, Alabama was picked to win that division.
Right, as always.
Yes.
And, and actually they had some very high expectations for Ole Miss, and there's been a lot of talk. It's going to be a very competitive Western Division this year. Mississippi State has very elevated expectations. I believe LSU, if I remember, only had one first-team All-SEC player, and that was Lyle Collins.
That's out of Redemptorist High School.
Out of Redemptorist High School, offensive tackle. He probably might have gone second or third round in the NFL draft this year. If he has a healthy and productive year, he's going to be a very high pick in the NFL next year.
Here are some others from the offensive side of the ball in the SEC. Nick Marshall out of Auburn, the quarterback.
Interesting. His stock really rose late last year.
Yes. TJ Yeldon, no surprise there. Running back position. Todd Gurley out of Georgia, no surprise there. Amari Cooper out of Alabama at the wide receiver spot. Sammy Coates out of Auburn, wide receiver. Tight end, O.J. Howard out of Alabama. Offensive lineman, Ari Kuandajo out of Alabama. Offensive lineman, Laramie Tunsil out of Ole Miss. Offensive lineman, Cedric Obuhi out of Texas A&M. Center, Reese Dismukes out of Auburn. And first team...
Wow,
defensively.
We have some evidence of benefits of sports immigration right there, because those last names, they either are from Africa or their folks are from Africa.
That's correct. And here's some more names that are going to be challenging. Robert Ditchie out of Ole Miss. And Dante Fowler, a junior out of Florida. He's a defensive lineman. Ashawn Robinson out of Alabama, defensive lineman. Gabe Wright, defensive lineman out of Auburn. Trey DePriest out of Alabama, linebacker. A.J. Johnson out of Tennessee, linebacker. Ramik Wilson out of Georgia.
Speedy guy.
Defensive back, Landon Collins out of Alabama. Defensive back, Vernon Hargraves out of Florida. And Cody Pruitt, defensive back out of Ole Miss. And DeShazer Everett out of Texas A&M, defensive back. Got to get to the special teamers for Eric. We've got the punter, Drew Kaser out of Texas A&M. The place kicker, Marshall Morgan out of Georgia. The return specialist, Christian Jones out of Alabama. And the athlete is Christian Jones out of Alabama.
That's a jack of all trades right there. He's a speedy and strong and not that big, which means he's agile.
Right. So you hear a lot of those Alabama guys, man. I mentioned that Alabama was picked to win their side of the Western Division. Auburn's picked to come in second, South Carolina, Georgia, and then LSU. On the other side, you've got South Carolina picked to win the Eastern Division, Georgia, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and unfortunately for my nephew, Kentucky's at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, yes, that's a very tough Eastern Division, unlike past years. You know, speaking of the University of South Carolina, did you hear the old ball coach Steve Spurrier put a little dig in at Nick Saban, backhanded compliment? He's like, every year Alabama's got the best players. They got the best teams. They're just very talented. They've been very fortunate. Now, I wish I'd had the audio, but the subtext was you got the best players every year, and you've only won the SEC twice.
And you know what, man? I ran down the wrong list for the Western Division. Actually, LSU's picked third.
That's
Alabama's picked first, Auburn second, LSU third, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, then Arkansas.
Except for Arkansas, all those teams have a shot.
Baseball report time. So, while we are getting that together, we're going to move from our college report to our baseball report. And we are going to start our baseball report with our folks. We're going to go straight live to St. Louis, Missouri, and get a report from Brian. Hey, Brian, are you there this morning?
Should be able to hear us. We got something.
Super fantastic, Brian. Super fantastic. Let's go ahead and run down today's report.
All right.
Go ahead.
West Division leading Los Angeles Dodgers are in town for a rare Saturday afternoon game against the hometown Cardinals. Pitching for the Dodgers, is Zach Greinke, a 6'2", 195 right-hander with an 11-5 record and a 2.73 ERA. Pitching for the Cardinals is Joe Kelly, a 6'1", 175-pound right-hander coming off a hamstring injury. He has a 1-1 record and a 3.44 ERA.
All right, man, that sounds like that's going to be an interesting game. Hey, Brian, man, I've got to ask you this question, man. I've been asking you this for the past 3 weeks, man, each time you report. So tell me, man, in what position in the lineup is the African-American batting today for the St. Louis Cardinals?
Third.
Yeah?
Say hello to my little.
Oh, man.
Awesome. Eric, the baseball report.
Oh, man. All joking aside, that sounds like a Greinke versus Kelly. That's going to be a great matchup. I hope that's on Fox.
The only thing is, Joe Kelly, it is. It's on Fox today at 3 o'clock our
Good.
time.
I'll be watching that.
Joe Kelly's coming off of his injury, and he's only had 2 starts since he's come off his injury, and in the last start, the Brewers smashed him.
Oh, well, might be a good matchup today.
Right.
2 smoking hot teams. Harry, did you want to run down the leaders? Or
let's start with the statistical leaders. That'll give me a chance to catch my breath a little.
I heard that. That was rich, man. So let's look at our statistics. I'll tell you what, fun All-Star game to watch last week. Little bit of controversy. If we have minor controversy, if we have time, I wouldn't mind discussing it at the end. But let's get through our statistical leaders first, shall we? In the National in the American League. Batting leader, Adrian Beltre of the Texas Rangers with a .337 average. All-Star Jose Altuve of the Astros with a .335 average. Robinson Cano, who is propping that Seattle Mariners team up and giving them a real chance this year with a .334 batting average in the AL. Home runs, my pick, I think a slam dunk for Rookie of the Year, Jose Abreu of the White Sox, 29. Nelson Cruz, the PED-free Nelson Cruz of Baltimore with 28. Edwin Encarnacion, who I think is a strong MVP candidate in the American League with 26. Runs batted in, Miggy Cabrera, the two-time MVP of the American League. Miguel Cabrera with 75 RBIs. Really tight, 2 through 4. Nelson Cruz of Baltimore with 74. Mike Trout, the other strong candidate for American League Most Valuable Player with 73, tied with Chicago White Sox first baseman Jose Abreu, 73. Edward Encarnacion has 70. American League win leader, he's sure to get passed pretty soon. Masahiro Tanaka of the Yankees with 12, but with that elbow injury, he's out for at least a month and a half, possibly the rest of the year. That's a real tough break for the Yankees. Rick Porcello of Detroit, quietly creeping along also with 12 wins. He's tied with Tanaka. Felix Hernandez, King Felix of Seattle. Max Scherzer of Detroit, right back on the horse where he was last year. And Garrett Richards, Max Scherzer, the reigning Cy Young winner. Garrett Richards of the LA Angels, all with 11 wins. Earned run average, King Felix with 2.12 ERA. Scott Kazmir of Oakland, and Oakland made some power moves with a 2.38 ERA. Tanaka with 2.51 in third place, but he's probably going to fall out. Richards with a 2.55 earned run average. In the National League, Troy Tulowitzki of the hapless Colorado Rockies, leading in batting average with a 3.45 average. Good candidate for MVP. Matt Adams of the Cardinals, he's keeping them trucking along, a 3.29 average. And reigning National League MVP Andrew McCutchen of the Pittsburgh Pirates with a 3.24 average. Matt Adams with the St. Louis Cardinals. Home runs, Tulowitzki and Giancarlo Stanton of the Miami Marlins tied at 21. Anthony Rizzo of the also hapless Chicago Cubs with 20. Todd Frazier of the Reds with 19. Marlon Birds of the Phillies with 18. RBI leaders, Giancarlo Stanton with 63, and really tight race there. Andrew McCutchen and Paul Goldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks with 61. Justin Morneau and Adrian Gonzalez of the Colorado Rockies and LA Dodgers respectively with 60. Wins, Adam Wainwright of the St. Louis Cardinals with 12. We got a little to talk on Wainwright at the end if we have time. Alfredo Simon is just balling out of control for the Reds. They just keep those pitchers coming. He also has 12. Zach Greinke, who we discussed, who started today, tied with his teammate Clayton Kershaw with 11 wins. Johnny Cueto of the Reds with 10. And ERA leaders, Adam Wainwright running away with that right now with a 1.83 ERA. Johnny Cueto of Cincinnati was the leader till Wainwright went on his recent tear. He has a 2.13 ERA. Josh Beckett of the Dodgers with a 2.26 ERA. And save leaders, I'll just go real quick on that. Fernando Rodney, another guy who's keeping those Seattle Mariners up. That Mariners pitching staff is just sick. 27 saves for Rodney in the National League. Craig Kimbrell of the Braves with 29. Trevor Rosenthal of the Cardinals with 28. K-Rod of the Milwaukee Brewers, that's Francisco Rodriguez, and Kenley Jansen of the Dodgers with 27 apiece.
Coming up in about 10 minutes, man, we've got
Noel Jackson with Music Satisfaction here on 96.9 FM, WHYR-LP, Baton Rouge Community Radio.
We're going to start with the American League East, where the Baltimore Orioles lead the Toronto Blue Jays by 4 games. Followed right behind the Blue Jays are the New York Yankees, 5 games back. The Detroit Tigers in the American League Central are running away with it, 6.5 games up on the Kansas City Royals.
They're the only team with a big lead.
Who are fading fast.
Yeah.
The Royals I really thought were built to last this year, but maybe not.
They're only 2.5 back of the wild card. I think it's Detroit is just that good. I still think Ned Yost deserves a pat on the back for the job he's done the last 2 years.
Yes. Cleveland's right there. They're only 7.5 games back. One game behind the Kansas City Royals. In the American League West, we've got the Oakland A's leading the way, and right behind them are, with 1.5 games out, are the Los Angeles
The LA Angels, and you've been calling that one.
Hey, man, I really like that team.
Oakland made a power move, though, which we might get to if we have time.
Okay. And Seattle's 8 games back, and as you alluded to in the statistical report, they're staying alive.
Yeah.
So
if the season ended yesterday, they'd be in the wild card.
All right. In the National League East, we've got that really tight race between the Washington Nationals and the Atlanta Braves, and there's just 1 percentage point separating those teams as of this morning. Washington has won 51 games with 42 losses. Atlanta's won 52 games with 43 losses. The next closest team are the New York Mets, 7 games back, and the Miami Marlins are 7.5 back.
They're fading.
And in the National League Central, the Milwaukee Brewers are holding on. They are one game up on the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cincinnati Reds have resurged, and they are now back into this race. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, who I still like, Eric, they're only 3.5 games out.
Barrett Richards is coming back to that lineup, and otherwise Pittsburgh's really healthy. The rest of the Central, I mean, like take St. Louis losing Yadier Molina, and there are some other injury issues going around there. So Pittsburgh has a chance now.
They really do, man, and I just like the way they're built. The Los Angeles Dodgers are leading the way in the National League West. They're actually tied with the San Francisco Dodgers, as the San Francisco Giants, as I saw this morning.
Okay, this is from last night.
This is from last night, yeah. So, being that the Dodgers lost to the Cardinals last night, and the Giants won, they're even now. So, and there's no other team to mention in that division.
Not even close. A couple of some fun facts.
We got time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, okay, as you know, we saw the All-Star game last week, and it was basically the Derek Jeter show. Derek Jeter, 19 years with the New York Yankees. As you know, in baseball, with all the money going around, and unrestricted free agency, and just the power that players union has, there aren't too many lifers in MLB. There are, however, 8 players who have been in the majors for 10 years or longer and have only played for one team. Derek Jeter is one. We'll do a guessing game, Perry. Can you name 2 other players? And I'll give you a couple of hints. One player you should know because of your rooting interest. Another player you've mentioned.
Yadier Molina.
That's right. Another player you've mentioned a lot on this show, and you also share a common alma mater with.
Oh, Ricky Weeks.
Ricky Weeks, 10 years in the majors. Yadier Molina also with 10 years.
Although I think Ricky Weeks' streak may be coming to an end.
Yeah, I can't see Milwaukee not making a move at some point with some of the come-ups they've had at the middle infield. Yeah. Other players, Jimmy Rollins with the Phillies, 14 years. Chase Utley, who's probably going to get moved any day now, with 11 seasons with the Phillies. The Phillies actually have 3 of those 7 players. Joe Mauer of the Twins, 10 years. We mentioned Weeks and Molina. David Wright with the Mets, 10 years. And Ryan Howard with the Phillies. And I don't know how much longer that's going to last either, but he's also been there for 10 seasons.
I'd like to see him finish his career out in St. Louis, meaning he's a St. Louis guy.
And he's a masher. And St. Louis could use a guy like that, but, they don't like to pay for veterans, and there's always that desperate team that'll pay for a free agent. But you know what, though? That's just the kind of guy they might be able to work in a trade deal late in the year as a hired gun.
Yeah. You said you had some Wainwright news.
Yeah, in the All-Star game, a little bit of controversy. I think it's partly manufactured and partly baseball has itself to blame for it. In the first inning, Adam Wainwright got lit up pretty hard. Well, it turned out after the fact, one of those hits he gave up was to Derek Jeter. It was an opposite field hit. And after the game, Wainwright basically admitted it was a cookie pitch to Jeter to give the man, just to honor the guy, give him his last hurrah. And he took all kinds of grief, and to me it's not, usually they say it's not the crime, it's the cover-up, but in this case it's not the crime, it's the confession. And to me, there wouldn't even be the least little bit of controversy if this game were treated in what my opinion is the exhibition it should be treated as opposed to having that significance of awarding that home field advantage in the World Series to the winning team. And that's probably why he got grief, and it could come back to be his detriment. The Cardinals are right there in contention.
Right.
I think, Perry, it's another example of why baseball, we've had interleague play since 1997. It's not like the old days where the National League just played National League, American just played American, and you should just flip a coin for home field. There's intermingling. I think it's time for baseball to go to having the team with the best record have home field in the World Series.
The team with the best record, but would that devalue the All-Star game? See, the other All-Star games don't have the significance that Major League Baseball has because of that.
Well, right, but you consider Wainwright, he really does have a dog in the hunt because his team won the World Series hosting a Game 7 just in 2011, and here he is serving a cookie pitch to Jeter because he treated it just like an exhibition. I think it was the right thing to do myself.
I do. I think what was wrong is to admit that that's what you did. That he should never have admitted that.
Yeah, that was a mistake. The truth is the light, and the light is the way, but the truth got him buried. It did not set him free.
And I wasn't surprised because Wainwright is traditionally a slow starter.
Yeah,
people jump on him in the first inning all the time.
And he got tattooed in that first inning.
So that didn't surprise me though that he got tattooed.
And I don't think that was a cookie pitch to Miguel Cabrera. I think he just got taken over the wall.
No, you don't throw cookies to Miguel Cabrera.
No. I just that's one of those things. But I'm curious to see how that evolves because it got talking.
You know what? I think another solution to propose may be that since they do play interactively, that which division, which league has the best record.
Now, I like that idea.
Play.
That makes as much sense.
Yes,
that makes as much sense.
Still doesn't stop devaluing that exhibition game.
It's an all-star game. But I hear you. Look, Bud Selig tried to do best. I just thought it was a little ill-conceived, and I think this was an example of how there's a lot of imperfection in that.
Yes.
Oakland Athletics, they made week before last, they made a power move. They acquired ace pitcher and also National League All-Star Jeff Samardzija and starter Jason Hamill, probably the only two decent pitchers in that rotation from the Cubs. You have an Oakland team that already had a ballerific rotation with Scott Kazmir and Sonny Gray and the like. The rich just got richer there in a team that dominates with pitchers, and now their hitters are just, their mashers are powering the ball all over the park. Unless the Angels make a counter move to help shore up their pitching staff a little more, because their hitters are off the charts too, I think Oakland might have made the move to pull just away in that AL West. And I know, Perry, you put your chips on LA, and it's going to be a great race.
It's going to be a great
But I think
race.
Oakland got that. I think they got the leg up. July 31st, trade deadline is right around the corner.
We'll see, man. Hey, man, you know what we do around this time?
Yep, as we always say,
ADT, J&S, love you.
Have a good afternoon.
Hail to the king and lots of love. May he protect us from the evil. Hail to the king, lots of love. May he protect us from evil.